That eventually people came down into my life and their habits were not my habits, and there was more of them than me, and I started compromising my habits, my beliefs, my discipline for their lifestyle. And boy, that was the decline of about a 10-year change in who I became. Those slow cracks of who I was and who I wanted to be, I started to lower my standards. And so my career started to take a less of a priority. Partying started to take more of a priority. And I came into this whole nother lifestyle that I had completely been away from. Drinking and drugging and womanizing and staying out late. All of that led to these experiences to where I finally had made a decision that those experiences were going to serve me and I was going to surrender. Thoughts were so negative all the time that I had to go to the gym. I had to go to just shut it off. 7 days a week, man. Every single day I went. Came back, new man every time. Over 3 months, I didn't look like I look now, but I felt how I felt now. I had the same level of confidence because I showed up for 90 days for myself, and now my boys were looking at me differently. My wife was desiring me again. I felt confident with my wife and holding her hand and taking the lead. And it was like, oh yeah, I'm coming back, right? Yeah, I'm building back. So the working out was just a component of it to get that guy to show up again.
Dane, welcome to the Present Fathers podcast. I'm finally excited to get you on because we planned this like forever ago, and here we are. And I love your message. I love what you're doing, helping men level up, especially with their fitness. So with that, let's get right to it. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit about who you are, your family, and then I'd love to get your story.
Yes. Thank you so much, George. Appreciate having me on. It's first time being a guest, so it's a little different sitting in this seat, telling my story. But I'll try to summarize it as effectively as possible.
We'll do it together. It'll be great.
Yeah, we'll put it together. Let it out. All right. So I'm 45 years old. Long story short, I am from Connecticut. I grew up in a pretty chaotic environment, super loving family, but it was chaotic, right? And the chaos I share is because lots of things were unpredictable and family was very comfortable with that. So people always learn from like great mentors, or they learn from like what not to do. So the context for me is my whole life has been based around learning from people's mistakes, right? Like, okay, I don't want to do that. I didn't have a lot of mentors, so I always learned from the people closest to me that I loved, make lots of bad decisions across many different areas of their life. And those decisions allowed me to kind of continuously develop my life. And so I was always somebody that sought out development and mentorship and next level and progress and feedback, right? Where those were like the opposite traits of my family. Right. So I, as an individual, carved a different path. Like they were more blue collar construction, and I kept seeking more. So I found a way to kind of fight my way to go to college. And when I got to college, I had to fight my way to figure out how to stay there and get a job, and then figure out, okay, now I got a job. How do I pay for rent? And then how do I pay for books? And like all of these things were my responsibility really, really early. And I chose to like go to Boston to do this, which was 3 hours away from my family. So it made it even more kind of back against the wall. Like you burned the boats. There is no going back, because going back meant like was going to be my life forever. So I always kind of had this mentality of like, I'm a fighter, I'm a survivor, right? And I always had to do that. And so that just leads into like a story of like, once I got through college, I had to make a lot of different decisions. And so my path started off being like a stockbroker, right? And that stockbroker led me to like making 500-600 calls a day, working like 12-hour days, building a book of business. And I excelled in an environment with hundreds of trainees. I became the number one trainee within a 2-year period. Wow. And this was calling business owners that were running over $1 million a year businesses. And I was a 21-year-old kid, really 20 at the time. I just got my licenses, and I was calling them, raising money and closing deals and very transactional stockbroker stuff, kind of like the movie Wolf of Wall Street, except we had real stocks, but that was the system. All right. And so what I loved about that is I had a mentor there that really taught me, and I became super moldable. And so I loved I've got a North Star. And so that North Star excelled me. And then I went to UBS Financial Services and I became the number one trainee out of a group of 250 trainees. And that was more of kind of financial services. And then I got recruited and went to Paychecks and I became an elite salesperson. And so all of that pain that I went through left me always trying, I guess, with a chip on my shoulder, right? Something to prove. I didn't finish college because I couldn't afford to finish college, right? So I had to like leave college and okay, now I got to leverage the information I had at college to like keep moving forward. And so I kept finding these niches where I would get into it, I would learn a craft, I would accelerate, and I'd find out where's the next level, and I'd go to that next level. And that helped me accelerate not only my skill set, but also my income. And I carried the straight path for a long time. And long story short, that leads to a place where I met my wife when I was 21 or 22 at this time in a club randomly. And I told her, hey, you're a spring chicken. I'm focused on my career. It's not a good time for me. And and she remembered that years later. We met 10 years later. But yeah, so I met her and she remembered how focused I was. And back then there were no cell phones. It was literally pagers. Right. So you'd page. And so that was like who I was. And long story short, I excelled. But then eventually people came down into my life and all my friends came down in my life and their habits were not my habits. And there was more of them than me. And I always say if there are two people going, somebody's making a U-turn and I made the U-turn. Right. Mm-hmm. And I started compromising my habits, my beliefs, my discipline for their lifestyle to fit in, right. To kind of compromise. And boy, that was the decline of about a 10-year change in who I became, because those slow cracks of who I was and who I wanted to be, I started to lower my standards. And so my career started to take a less of a priority. Partying started to take more of a priority. And I came into this whole nother lifestyle that I had completely been away from, right? Which was drinking and drugging and womanizing and staying out late. And it was like, okay, now I saw good and bad in life, right? Yeah. And so all of that led to these experiences to where I finally had made a decision that those experiences were going to serve me and I was going to surrender. And I surrendered to Christ. And so for me, I wanted this renewing of myself. And so I decided I was going to put all this down and I was going to commit to going to church for 90 days. And that meant that I had to make a better decision on Friday and Saturday so that I could get up for the Sunday. That was the only commitment I made to myself because I hadn't made one in so friggin' long. Like literally 10 years went by and I'm like, I haven't made a commitment that I have kept to myself in almost 10 years. And I was successful in business, but I was talented enough to keep getting by. You know what I mean? Right. I had the talent to where I learned enough and I can get by. And that I knew I wasn't living at my best self.
Can you expand upon that a little bit too? Because I think, especially with like social media and the world we live in, right? It's so easy for people to see someone as quote successful, right? Because they make a lot of money or they did a big thing somewhere, right? But secretly their life is just in shambles, right? So what did that look like for you? Because clearly outside of being successful in work, the rest of your life was probably not going so well, right? And what are some of those experiences you had and things you realized that like younger current men can learn from your experience and not be in that cycle?
Yeah. So for me, it was like the cycle that I needed to break was like being good 3 or 4 days a week, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday or Saturday, make a bad decision. And that leaked into like Monday and Tuesday. And then the way I looked at myself, the way I spoke to myself, the way I showed up for people, it all contributed. And then, okay, 3 days of momentum. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. You want to have a drink Friday? Sure. Where are we meeting? Right. And it's like, and that's so easily because we lose those standards. We forget to kind of shut that off for a period of time to get back the standards and qualities and discipline that we know is in there and that we want, that we're craving. And it takes that moment of time, like whether it's a transformation or it's isolation, it's like you kind of need this period of time for you to get centered, right? With like, what's the noise? What's the chaos? And where do I need to go? And so for me, I had to keep going down levels, right? Like that was just God's plan for me. And then he got my attention. And long story short, I committed myself to go to church for 90 days. That left into a day where you can get saved. I felt like this is my chance. I set a date. And 2 days before the saving, I ran into my wife in the gym, and we recognized that we knew each other from 10 years ago. And we remembered this little incident that we had. And it was like, and I just knew, right? I knew like this was different. It was like crazy, right? It was like, damn, I have a feeling this is different, right? And so here's me, like, this is a great story I like to tell. I met her on a Friday. My baptism, like the saving, is on a Sunday. And here I am thinking, wow, she's open to going and getting drinks tonight. And I'm totally down. And I'm thinking, but then I'm going to probably miss the thing on Sunday because I know myself. Like, I go to these places, like in this, I didn't have these guardrails. And sure enough, she was like, I can't tonight. And I'm like, oh, thank God. It was like, I almost was like saved from it. And so I got saved that Sunday, and she got back from this weekend trip, and she's like, I'm available tonight. And so literally she was my wife. And that was a gift for my commitment and my sacrifice. And I knew when the lights were on, I knew what it was. But 90 days earlier, I wouldn't have recognized, hey, this is somebody that's supposed to be really special in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we talk about that a lot too. Like, you need to become the man worthy of that type of woman too.
That's right.
And so, like, because you had started down the path of like, hey, I'm gonna start prioritizing the right things in my life. Your mindset had already started to shift and recognize like, hey, she is a special person. I need to make sure that I'm investing in this.
And I felt the difference was I felt I deserved her. Where 90 days earlier, I wouldn't have, because I showed up for myself at least one day a week, which is I went to church. That was really like the biggest commitment that I kept, was just going to that church service every Sunday. So that was like a micro commitment that was like, hey, I feel good. Like I said I was going to do something, and I did it, and so I felt like that was it. So we ended up getting married. We had 2 wonderful kids. We moved to South Carolina. We left Florida because we both had kind of grown up there, and I had made a lot of bad decisions, and we were like, hey, let's go get a fresh start. So as I had met her, I had just started my first headhunting firm in the technology space. And shortly later, she joined, and she helped me build the first firm for the first 7 years. And then we launched our second firm, which was Palarino Partners. And that one really is the one that took off. We had taken everything we learned from the first 7 years of building these teams and niche down and really got tight on who our core buyer was. And we, became number 1 on Google for what we did, which was hiring product managers for technology companies. So we went from like this business of outbounding, building all these relationships, to 20, 30 leads a month coming in to a business unsolicited. And awesome. But it took a lot of grind, and that business took 3 years to do that. It took a year to kind of get the clients to come calling, and then 2 years of just kind of like, hey, here it is, right? And in that, again, the discipline went away. I was training at Orange Theory. I was checking the box, like, oh yeah, but I had the standards were gone again, right? I had a couple of kids, so now I was accepting the beers and accepting the wine and accepting the midweek cocktail and all these little things that, again, led to this body that I woke up one day 3 years later, like my business was number 1. We were crushing it, and I just hated waking up. And I was like, damn, I have another kid coming. My first son was 3, and my wife was pregnant. And I knew, like, this doesn't scale well. Like, I don't like who I am. And I didn't like the way I was speaking to them at times, because I was always on my heels and I didn't feel like I was leading the right way. And again, I tell you the context of I always knew about self-development. So that I had this reminder, like, better. Like, better, right?
Right.
And so that was the hard thing, because it was like,
you had a set standard and you kept breaking it.
Yeah. And I knew what good looked like. And I was like, and now I'm here with a 3-year-old, and I have to tell him to have standards. And I'm like, I'm not even implementing what I know. It's one thing if you don't know about standards, right? If you've never been in shape and you don't really know, like you never had the playbook. But I knew there's a playbook, and I know how to research, and I know how to go out there and get the information to put this in play. And so it took about a year of some bad decisions, and then COVID hit, and then like I had a really bad. I never drank like to get drunk, but I got drunk and I vomited, and I knew like this is it. Like this is kind of the end of this version of me. I don't want this guy anymore.
Yeah, I think a lot of people say, or at least I've said it before, that the pain of of staying where you're at has to be less than the pain of change, you know. And I
Yeah.
think we all get to that point. And I guess one of my big questions to you in all of this, because, you know, you were in the process of sanctification after you got saved, obviously. But before then, there's always, like, when people look back, they always see those little steps where God's kind of, you know, tried to pull them closer to him, knock on their heart's door,
Yeah.
as they say. So what were some of the pain points for you that made you really realize, okay, I need to do something to change? Because you had mentioned that you were keeping your promises to yourself one day a week, right?
Yeah.
And so for me personally, my self-esteem and all the things I've built up happened by slaying the smaller dragons and moving to the bigger ones, but also being really consistent with myself. Like, when I break my own promises to myself, I mean, everything just goes to shambles. So I'm curious what was doing that for you.
For me, it was, I knew I didn't want to drink alcohol, and I never said no, right? And I wasn't a big drinker, but it was like, why did I have the 1 or 2 beers? I didn't even want it, right? I knew I needed to be getting up earlier, and I wasn't. I knew I shouldn't be eating sugar after 9 o'clock, and I was eating chocolate all the time, and then waking up with the stomach aches and the digestion issues, and then feeling that all day. And then it was like, it just became this cycle where every day I hated the way I felt. Then I made the bad decision again. And then I felt bad about it. And then I spoke badly to myself about it. And then, of course, now the loved ones, they want to love you, but you don't even love yourself. So how can you receive that love? And how can you give back the love that they deserve? So now I'm in this new marriage, and I'm not treating my wife the way that she needs to be treated because I don't feel good about myself. My kids want to go to the beach, and I'm like, F no, we're not doing the beach. I'm thinking of every excuse possible to not go, to have to take my shirt off at the beach. And I'm, you know, like, when I had this reflection of like all these micro things, like, because it was this awareness of like, dude, how did I get here? Like, how did I get here? I've been training. How do I look like a pear right now? How do I have no confidence? I don't recognize myself. Everything my wife does, I'm insecure about. And then, you know, I knew as a dad, like, my wife knows when I'm having these insecure moments, she can deal with that shit, but my kids aren't going to know that. Right. And that stuff's going to bleed into them. So those were the moments where it was like, yeah, like, everybody deserves better here, you know? And so that was kind of the conversation I started to have with myself. And when I knew I wasn't showing up for myself, I had known, like, yeah, I got to recreate. And I knew it wasn't going to be overnight, but it was going to be kind of heads down and just keep going. And so, yeah, that was my decision. And so I didn't have like a lot of guys, like, when we get these coaching guys, like, well, let me talk to my wife and all that. Like, I didn't talk to my wife about these things. It was like, I'm insecure. I need to go do what I need to do to, like, show up for who you need. You know, that was a big thing for me. Like, I didn't want to tell her, I'm going to go get jacked and you're going to see one day. And, you know, I'm going to get fit. I just knew I'm going to get up every day, and everything that I'm doing now, I'm going to do the opposite, you know? Right. I mean, and so I slowly started finding better habits and swapping those habits. And that led to me being so adamant about looking the part, because it was like, if I'm going to do this work, I'm going to look the part now. Like, I'm not going to be one of these guys anymore that goes in there and does the 4 a.m. thing and does the 5 meals, and then nobody fucking knows that I work out. You know, it's like, I'm gonna really figure out the pieces, just like everything else I did. I always built the best because I want the best and I want to deliver the best. So I'm like, I'm gonna fucking figure this out. And it took me over 3 years to do it, right? To go out and kind of get these pieces of nutrition that were good for guys over 35, and then training that's not going to put me at a high risk tolerance to where if you know, I blow a knee or I blow a shoulder, like, that's the end of the journey. And then it's like something that I can love and I can get interested in and find a passion to, because I didn't want it to be short lived, you know? So it was like, is that CrossFit? Is that jujitsu? Like, I went through all these, you know, things of like, what is it for me? And that's what I always tell men. It's like, it doesn't need to be bodybuilding. It ended up being bodybuilding for me, but it was about finding something you can go deep in, right? And get better. And just as we're asking our kids to grow, I always say, grow alongside them. Like, that's what I guess ultimately decided, like, I want to grow alongside them. I don't want to be stagnant and be the guy like, you should have saw me in my 20s.
Right. Yeah. Uncle Rico.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that, because you were talking about the voice in your head, right? You were trying to improve your thoughts and the
Yeah.
voice in your head. You were taking it from a negative kind of thought loop to, okay, this is what I'm going to get done. I'm going to do it regardless of what I think. So it's clear that you probably had a lot of naysayers that you had to deal with. Talk to us about how because you had mentioned that you were just going in to the gym and you weren't telling anybody. And that's why I'm prompting this, because I feel like that's what you were having to deal with externally. So
Yeah.
can you tell us how you dealt with the naysayers personally and how you changed that voice in your head?
So good. Yeah. There's a couple of different voices or naysayers, right? Like there's the family that you always have to deal with because they don't see the fit, healthy person, but you're making decisions like a fit and healthy person. And you're asking for, you're incorporating discipline and you're saying no to things. And they don't see somebody that looks like what's this really going to impact you? And so until you look the part, like now nobody fucks with me. They're like, obviously you don't drink, right? You're not having cake, are you? And so, but then back then,
for those
it's like
listening, Dane is jacked. My man is yoked.
yeah, thank you, man.
If you're not watching the YouTube and only listening, he definitely looks the part now.
Yeah, so it was like I always tell people, like, your family's going to be the first ones to kind of, you look too skinny, or they're going to just start, because they're going to see you're chasing something that they're not chasing, and they kind of just don't like it. And so there's that, like, dealing with that when you go to somebody else's house. How do you, like, not blow the whole weekend? And there was, like, challenges, where I'm showing up, cooking the same thing and eating the same thing, but having the one big meal with them and having them explain, like, I'm on this journey and I'm trying, like, I know you don't see it, but one day you will see it. So that was one of them. Then the other ones are your friends. They're like, dude, you're 40, man. You're too old to be building muscle. Like, that shit is done, like, just accept the role. And for me, that was like, I think that was probably the challenge for me. It was like, oh, okay. We'll see about that,
Yeah, it's fuel to your fire, like, don't tell me what I can't do,
Yeah. And then, like, just the other one is like, well, don't you have a family and priorities? Like, how do you have time to be doing all this gym stuff? And, like, don't you, it's like, there's no option for that. Right. Because the other guy shows up again. If I don't go and create this guy every day, and so the journey for me was like, that was the best part. You have to have these obstacles and these naysayers, and you have to get used to these uncomfortable experiences to know, damn, I can say no. Like, the best part for me with a lot of our clients is how they learn the first 3 months to say no in social outings with alcohol and get comfortable with it. Because once you get it, it's like, damn, that's really not that hard.
It's freedom.
I got the playbook. I know what to say. And so for me, like, that was it. And then, like, honestly, my mom, like, her parents, the best. My mom, we're super close, but she doesn't see me a lot. We don't see her a lot. And long story short, she didn't know what I looked like. She knew me from 3 years ago. And then my brother sent her a picture when I went online in July. That's when I launched this brand on Instagram.
Right.
And so everyone else is like being like, oh, you look great. And she's like, you should really go see a doctor. Are you okay? I'm like, that's exactly what you would say. But if I was like 50 pounds overweight, she'd be like, you look so healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So that's just, I think your family is family. They're always the toughest.
Yeah, that's funny. I want to go back because you raised a really good point, and I really want to drive it home because people probably look at guys like you. I'm pretty fit too, and they probably just assume like, oh, that's the only thing that matters to them. It's like, no, you're really missing the point, right?
Yeah.
And we're not saying that every dad needs to go be as jacked as possible, right? It's not realistic. A lot of people don't have the time or energy. It's like there are serious limitations for a lot of people, right? But you should be some level of fit. And you brought it up in your story, right? Because it's, first of all, the most basic form of discipline you can have over yourself, and in turn gives you keeping your promises to yourself and some self-confidence, right? And then what you were describing was how you weren't showing up as a good husband or father because you had so much self-loathing because you weren't in the place you wanted to be. Yeah. And you felt terrible and you felt worse, and like all of that stuff spirals. It's a very mental experience. It's not just your body. And so, like, the point I want to make, and then would love your input on this as well, is like, men, the reason we stress fighting to be more physically fit and setting a good example is because it's not about how good your body looks. It's about how good you're going to be as a husband and as a father. You're going to start showing up as a much better man for the people who rely on you the most. And it's that example you're setting. It's facilitating your leadership, which is your number one duty for your family. And so fitness isn't everything, but it's not nothing either. And it's one of the easiest ways for you to start. You already talked about like refusing the drinks in social settings or not eating the cake at the parties. Well, when you're developing discipline like a muscle, you're building up your self-reliance to where you're not seeking external validation in social settings, and you're picking for yourself and your family the best route forward. So I'd love for you to add into that, but you were clearly highlighting that in your personal journey.
Yeah, I think so. Go back. What was the main talking point?
Just how, like, especially if you're already out of shape, how it's so easy for that to be such a drain on your ability to be the right man that your family deserves.
Yeah.
And how fitness is usually a very good first step for a lot of people to start becoming the leader they need to be for their family.
Yeah. So for me, it was that, like, I literally was at a place where the thoughts were so negative all the time that I had to go to the gym. I had to go to just shut it off. And I would go 2 hours sometimes because that's how long it took to shut it off. And it was sad, but it was my battle, right? And so we lived in this apartment, and it was like a quarter mile down one hall, a quarter mile down the other hall. And I just remember 7 days a week, man, every single day I went. Monday through Sunday, down the hall, same routine, same thoughts, going to get it. Came back, new man every time, right? Like, and it was like that. And then that over 3 months, I didn't look like I look now, but I felt how I felt now. I had the same level of confidence because I showed up for 90 days for myself. Everyone recognized my transformation. There was still a lot of work to go where I wanted to keep sculpting, but it was already there. People kept asking, why do you keep going? It was like, because this is addicting. Like, I feel amazing. Like I, again, showed up for myself, and now my boys were looking at me differently. My wife was desiring me again. I felt confident with my wife and holding her hand and taking the lead. And it was like, oh yeah, I'm coming back, right? Like, yeah, I'm building back. So the working out was just a component of it to get that guy to show up again. Right? The physical piece was like, I know that that's going to start making me feel better. But then I took it to another, like, I kept loving the process because I wanted to get deeper and I didn't want to get complacent with it. So I kept going deeper into the sculpting process of how do I keep getting better and refining it and making it so that it's manageable in my lifestyle and I'm not depleted and miserable and angry. And, and so that was the fun of it. So yeah, to your point, I always tell guys, man, it's not about the physical outside. That happens when you tighten up the discipline and you get better at the doing, right? But the first part is just showing up and having a routine that gets your vibration higher and slaying whatever dragon you need to slay, right? And that's that. For me, it was just these insecurities as a leader and as a husband, and it came out of nowhere, man. And that's the thing about the devil, like the disguise is everywhere. I got into a new marriage. Everything was great. We never fought. And then bam, man, our relationship was attacked spiritually. We had so many challenges. And it was like, and then that incorporated into not eating and taking care of myself. It was just like I had this whirlwind of like, whoa, I have no control here. Yeah. And I know that so many men feel like they have no control and they don't know where to start. And I felt that way. That was the biggest thing. It was like, I don't know what I have control over anymore. Like I can't control my thoughts. I can't control when me and my wife have a fight. I can't control when all of a sudden I come up with this big insecurity out of no fucking place and I cause a fight for no reason, and I was like, I'm so unpredictable, like how am I going to build a family on this foundation? And so for me, like I shifted to a 4 a.m. routine so I could be predictable to myself. That was it. I was like, I want to be the guy, if somebody has an accident at 5 a.m., that they know they can call me and I'll be up. And I was never that guy. And I always wanted to be that guy. I wanted to be that guy. And they'd call in the middle of the night, like, there's the dude. And sober-minded, and not lukewarm. And so that was me stepping into that vibration of like, if you're going to do something, don't do it lukewarm. Do it the right way, right? And be fully committed to it and be passionate about it. And so that was the journey of my transformation, for sure.
I love that. Yeah. And so to all the guys out there listening, right, it's whatever your struggle is, like the first step is to just start taking some basic action, right? And you talked about that. You had to test all these different things and it wasn't perfect and it's a journey. but you within 90 days were already feeling significantly better and showing up better because it started changing you inside, even though the outside hadn't fully changed yet. Right. And that can apply beyond fitness too, man. So
Yeah.
take that example and start taking some action.
Yeah.
So obviously now you're running Dad Bod Sculptors. So tell us a little bit about how you're doing that, how you coach men, and really get them going. Because I think this is going to answer a lot of people's questions like, well, okay, Dane, how do I get started?
Yeah. So my background has been headhunting. So like since 2010 to 2013, I still do it. We still run the headhunting firm, but all we've done is help these businesses scale. Earlier stage companies, private companies, Duolingos, Indeeds, like those are our client lists. And we would help these CEOs build these world-class teams so that they can get acquired, and they've had this net worth play, and then everybody would go and off to Legoland. When I recognized what I did in my own life, which was I succeeded in business at the compromise of my health, I realized, well, I did it because that's all with everything my clients do. Like they all compromise their health for success. So I was just mirroring what I saw. So it became passionate about going out and building a system. Like these guys need health. Like health is wealth. I know what goes on in the man of a thought. No matter how much money is in your bank account, if you're not secure, you're not running a stable household. It's just matter of fact. You don't get money won't buy that for you. It's a front. And so I knew like these dudes are also having these feelings and they're also having these struggles. Like, the food is causing these feelings. So after going and building this plan that worked for me, I decided that next phase of my life was filling purpose, not only helping the businesses, but I want to help the people running the businesses and the leaders and the men that are running families. And I want to do it in a simple form. So that was the gist of Dad Bod Sculptors. I was going to do a gym originally, but the cost of running a gym and the risk of owning a physical gym, I just thought, well, that's a lot to bite off. I still have the headhunting firm. Let me launch Dad Bod Sculptors. So I launched it on Instagram in July of last year. And I had only been on LinkedIn for 14 years. I had never been on Instagram. So I didn't know the difference between a reel, a story, a post, the fucking music. God gave me enough rope not to hang myself that summer, as I like to say. I really questioned my sanity. I was like, I literally traded in like a gold mine business. Like I built this other business where it was very optimized. And I'm like, now I'm on the phone fighting with typos all day to get a fucking post up. I was like, is this really what I want to do?
I feel your pain.
Yeah. And my wife said, well, why are you doing it? And it wasn't a money play. It was literally a purpose play. And the purpose comes from this, like over the years, as I transformed, all these guys in the gym didn't transform, but they saw me. What are you doing? How did you do that? Right. And so you give these guys little nuggets, and the ones that followed up on it and had the result, like when they would come back to me and be like, dude, I tried that. And the way they lit up, that they saw a difference from a recommendation in their body or in their training, it was way more rewarding than all of the 14 years of recruiting. I never got that feeling.
Yeah.
So that's how I knew God was speaking to me here. Like he's asking me to do this. Like, and I was scared as hell, man. I didn't want to get in front of the camera. My whole other business was over the phone. So I dealt with for like 3 or 4 months up to Dad Bods, stopping and going like lukewarm because I was super uncomfortable. Like, do I really want to do this? I'm very private. I don't really believe in like, putting all this out there. Like I was just different. But again, like it goes back to like, well, that's what that guy believes. This guy's trying to do something different. He has a different mission, a different purpose. You got to get aligned. And so I had to have those conversations with myself, and I did, and I launched it with the purpose of really simplifying the process for busy men, helping them ensure that they can control their body composition while still maintaining their lifestyle.
So what are some of the basics you get guys typically going on? Not giving away all your secrets or whatever, but just, there's a lot of guys out there who I think can relate to your personal experience where I'm super busy. I don't have time to work out. That's an excuse I hear all the time. Well, I don't have the time for it. I'm like, no, did you watch an episode of a show this week? Okay. That you could have worked out,
Yeah.
But, what are some of the things that you typically get guys going on to start recalibrating the chaos and putting some order in it?
Yeah, so we do like a big intake form where they have an onboarding process where they're telling us not the things they've eaten, but also their training style and their motivation, their time, their mindset, and their health. And then we work with our coaches. So good thing about me is I went and hired IFBB pros and nutritionists on the back end to help with making sure that we're getting the body comp right. But that allows me to spend a lot more time with them, making sure that we are taking these solutions and implementing it into their lifestyle so that they can actually have success with it. Because that's where I failed for many years. I bought a lot of these cookie cutter plans and I got a bunch of PDFs and I got a whole nother job. Okay, I got the workout here. I got to get the training here. Okay, now I got to send a picture over here.
Right.
And I was just really disciplined, but I'm like 99% of the people fall off of this thing. And I can see why, because it's a whole nother job. And so we wanted to just really simplify that process for them. Like, dude, we're going to have one place for you. And we're going to tell you what to eat, when to eat, how much of it to eat. We're going to tell you what to train, when to train, how to actually train it. Every week, you're going to have private check-ins and personalized targets. So we're going to calibrate, we're going to measure, we're going to make some changes, and we're going to go back and do it again for the next week. So they've got that investment from me, right? They're within 30 to 60 minutes. Hey, Dane, I'm stuck with it. Bam, they've got that. They feel like they're a buddy. So it's like that servicing them, man, is like, it lights me up, right? And so knowing I have the coaches that help with the plan. So most fitness guys are stuck. They can't scale because they're writing the plans. They're doing the nutrition. They're doing the check-ins. They can't service the client the way the client wants to be served. So this is like the best of both worlds because I'm the dad and I can tell our coaches, hey, this is the guy's day-to-day. This is how we need to structure this deal, right? This is when he needs to train. This is how we need to work the cards. So I'm that extra layer making sure that it's actually kind of white gloved and done for you. They just kind of got to show up and do their part. And so that becomes the convenience, right? To where the decision fatigue that I had for so damn long goes away around. It goes away around training. It goes away on nutrition. It goes away on recovery. You just show up and you calibrate. You check in and we adjust.
That's good.
And so that's what I wanted.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I recommend that to people all the time. Like, look, simplify. Just start simple, right?
That's it.
You're not going to conquer. You're not going to become Arnold Schwarzenegger in a week, right?
That's right.
Just get simple as possible.
Yeah.
Just do it consistently, and let's grow from there. But it sounds like you guys have taken that to a way higher level where you're really hitting pedal to the metal, all gas, no brakes.
Yeah, we've broken it a couple of times because that's just what happens, right? You build it, and hey, we're not delivering this the way that we want, and we got to fix some pieces. And that's the fun of it too, right? That's my job. It's just kind of, okay. But once you get it going, you've got a system. Now we're building the community with hundreds of other dads. And that is building a momentum to now weekly guys are looking forward to coming and being like sharing a victory or coming in and saying, dude, I failed last week, but I dreaded having to tell you guys this, but I got to tell you. So it's that little bit of accountability that you want. Like, again, I did my journey all alone for too long.
It's hard.
And it was
really
hard. I was watching YouTube videos every night for multiple hours because I had the convenience that a lot of people don't have. That other business was generating cash and it was revenue. It only took a couple hours of my day, and I can now invest in this where most people can't. So so I want people to realize you're not going to have to be doing all this. All of that has been condensed so we can speed up the transformation in a shorter period of time because that's idea. It shouldn't have taken 3 years. I did it the hard way. Like I do most things.
Well, you learn the hard way so others can win the easy way, right? And can you expand a little bit upon because again, it's not all about the fitness. Can you talk about how the men who come through your program and are working in your program, and you already alluded to it, kind of the accountability piece there, how much different they start to become, not just physically, but the wins they share, and you can kind of see it in the guy when he gets a little bit of progress, he holds his shoulders high, his physiology changes. So just talk to me about what you see consistently to kind of just encourage those out there to get started.
That's a great point. I'll piggyback on that because it is like you always see the before pictures of the first one and it's always down or always just kind of, it's almost like they hate taking it, like I hated taking it, but then you come around and it's here and you should have saw in the gym, the lighting, it was like unbelievable, and they start feeling it themselves. Like I did a call Friday. He's like, man, the lighting the other day in my gym. It was like he was feeling himself, And I was like, that's where you need to be, man. Now you start hitting it. When you go from a guy that was divorced, lost his wife, was overweight, had all these issues, and now all of a sudden he's feeling himself in the gym again. Like mission complete. Like, he's on his way. Now he's on dating sites and he's off and running. He's got the new version that is new and improved. So that's the end version. The other victories are just guys that are coming along, and the first phase is kind of do, right? And then when they start to do well, that's a victory. It's like, oh, I'm doing it. Yes, that's a victory, and I've done it for 2 weeks. Oh, and now from week 3 to 4, I'm doing it better, right? And now there's some momentum there. And then the 5 and 6, it's like, oh, now I'm doing it and seeing it, right? Because we're measuring and we're taking pictures and we're adjusting. So like all these little things are little victories. And I always tell guys like we're not going to look at day to day, go meal to meal, right? Win the meal. Keep this for 3 hours, win the next meal. Don't overcomplicate it. Like alcoholics don't think about not drinking for years. Don't think about the 8 o'clock sugar that you're craving. Just think about winning this meal and getting to the next one, right? And if you build the plan the right way, the best part is, man, these guys are always like, and I had a family in this town, they're like picking my brain, and I was like, how much food? And I said, man, the common theme is most guys are like, I'm eating more than I've ever eaten and I'm losing more weight than I've ever lost. And the common theme 100% for all of them is I have not seen this weight since my 20s. That's the best part. Like, because that means they've tapped into that fountain of youth. Because when I did this, I told my wife, I'm like, I feel like fucking Benjamin Button. I feel like I reverse aged. I feel way better than I did 3 years ago. Like, I felt this huge confidence of like fountain of youth. Like I was like invincible again. And so when those guys say that, I know they're tracking, right? Like they're tracking to that, hey, I'm not too old anymore. Cause that first excuse is I'm too old. And when you say, I haven't seen this weight since my 20s, you automatically associate, right? Like us were like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Like if I can do this, I can get in better shape than I was in my 20s. And once I realized that as my own, that's when I was like, well, fuck, why am I going to stop here? Because at 18 months into my journey, I got to a place where I was comfortable and I could show pictures. But when I went to the gym and I was outside the gym, I still looked like everybody else. And that's okay. I was still healthy, but I knew this is going to fade for me. I'm an addictive person. It's going to fade. I've got to find something, right? And I was like, I want to go deeper into the muscle building phase of it. I want to learn how to really put muscle tissue on. And so then that, the next 18 months for me was like studying that process.
Awesome. So Dane, there's a fine line and a good balance between treating your food as fuel, especially if you're an emotional eater, and loving the diet that you're on so that you can consistently stay on it for a long term, right?
100%.
So how do you love your diet, and like what are some small things men can do? Because like a great example, seed oils, processed garbage, cutting out sugars. Like there's some basics that we can do and still make food decent. So what are some things that you would recommend to guys just trying to love their diet, but at the same time attack the bad stuff, right?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think it's all about like having fun with the food. I post on Instagram a lot of my foods and the same foods, but I honestly, when you get into a system and a routine and you understand how you feel after that meal and what phase of your day that meal gets you through, like every meal has a purpose for me, right? Like, so I can think of my pre-workout meal. I look forward, it's been the same meal for over a year. And every single night, I cannot wait to get up and have the pre-workout meal. Right? It's a frozen banana and it's maple protein. And it's like, I think about that phase. So I always tell people like, pick something you like that you get excited about that you're going to enjoy. Let's have fun with it. And so protein powders, I'm not a big believer in them, but something like that can make the game fun again, right? Where you pick something you like and you just put it in one meal. And then there are other things that I do. Like I always say, like, simplify the food, single ingredients, stay away from all these seasonings in high sodium teriyaki sauces and barbecue sauces. Like those things are loaded with sodium. Like everything that I do is like a lean protein, a vegetable, and a clean carb, right? Mm-hmm. Ones that I know are optimal for me. There's like probably 12 things I eat in total, but I enjoy every meal because every meal is designed differently and seasoned differently. So some of those seasonings are like Mr. Dash. I recommend to all my clients Mr. Dash, no salt seasoning, because you could season it up and there's no sodium in it, and then you add your own salt. So you can do steak seasoning, chicken seasoning, chipotle seasoning, and that changes dishes. Seasonings is a big thing.
Yeah, and I think you can also put like when you do salt, you can do like Celtic salt that actually has real minerals that your body benefits from instead of all the other garbage, right?
That's right.
That's processed. And like I went to George's house, and you know, the man pretty much just eats jasmine rice with some kind of protein. But I'm telling you, every time I was there, I was so excited for that next meal because it was just like I knew I was going to get everything I needed. It was no guilt, and it was going to taste amazing.
Yeah.
And like we would go and like rock out a workout, you know, and it's like you just felt great, you know. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys
That's
always
right.
know
That's
the
right.
chicken and rice. And
Well,
that's,
yeah. We heard it from Dan Go, actually. We did an episode with him a long time ago. And I had done it my whole life. I didn't even realize it. And he talked about like, how much do you value variety, right?
yeah.
Is variety really that important to you? And when you start to let go of needing variety and saving it for like fancy dinners when you go out with your wife or something, or going on a vacation, like you can just get the same meal consistently. Like you said, you've had the same pre-workout meal for a year. Okay.
Yeah.
Because now you don't spend any mental energy worrying about like, well, what am I going to eat? It's just one less thing to worry about.
Yeah.
And so the simplicity actually becomes a huge benefit to you mentally, because you're not stressing about like, well, what's the next meal going to be and how do I make it? And does it have the macros in it that I need? It's like, that's where starting simple. And that's the other thing too, right? There's so many things out there that'll tell you to like min-max everything about your workout and everything about your diet and all that kind of stuff. It's like, are you a bodybuilding pro?
Yeah.
No? Okay. So for 99% of us, it's just start eating a little bit better, simpler, and just be very consistent and work hard on your workout, even if it's not perfect. You're going to make a lot of progress. And then from there, when you had this experience, right? You got to the place, you're like, hey, I feel really good about myself. Now it's time to like go all in on learning how to build as much muscle as possible. And you did it, right? Yeah. But you already had this strong foundation to work from. You weren't fighting with both hands behind your back. And so, it sounds like you're a huge proponent of that too. And that's why I really just try and encourage men on that, is like the simplicity may seem boring to start, but after like even just a month of it, you'll realize how much better it is, because you're just not stressing about, is this good or bad? And all that.
Dude, I'll tell you, man, we do check-ins every Friday, and we have to change the plan sometimes. 9 out of 10 times, guys are like, dude, don't change the plan. I love it. I'm like, you were just complaining about you were eating the same thing. You're like, yeah, but it works. I'm super productive on it. I love it. It's like, I told you, you're coming around. And I was the same way. Like, I got healthy eating my own things in different varieties, but I had some of the same dishes. But when I went to compete to do a bodybuilding show, and the guy gave me the menu, and I was looking at it, and I was like, well, where are the other days? And he's like, well, that's the menu. And I was like, you want me to eat the same thing every day? Like these 5 days? He's like, yeah. And I was like, well, fuck, that's going to be pretty boring. It was like, really? That's how they do it? He's like, how do you think your body gets used to processing these foods? And he just simplified it for me. And I was like, I understood the why. So I always teach guys the why, right? Here's the why. We want to get our body to a place where it's not a furnace, but it's not a freezer, but it's a furnace. Yeah. It has to get used to the things that we're putting into it so that it can pull the micronutrients and distribute them properly in the body. And then we can move from there. Is something causing backup? Is something causing inflammation? Is this carb working more optimally? Let's double down on that around your training time. So then you can tweak it and all, but in the beginning, it's just like the simplest form of like, let's pick a good carb that works for you. Let's pick a good protein. Let's pick a good veggie, and let's figure out what your day looks like and how many meals we can get in to be optimal for you.
Man.
And I think from the neuroplasticity side of things, for me personally, it always like when I was, I'd cheat on like donuts or cupcakes or something with heavy sugars, like your brain gets addicted and you rewire your brain to love that. Right. But about 3 weeks, like 3 or 4 weeks of eating the boring stuff, as you would say, when you're starting a diet, and you start getting used to it, like the brain rewires itself, and it's like, oh, I love that. And now it's like vegetables taste amazing, and like all the garbage that you were eating before, you look at it and you're like, no, I'm not going back. Like you're focused, you're laser now, but it takes a while to get to that point, right?
It does. Yeah. There's an appreciation. Like if you took my green beans away from me, I would lose my shit, Like a year ago, like I never liked green beans, but now it's like, I've come to cook them the right way and have the same texture. And it's like, I don't like McDonald's. I always tell this analogy, but I know if I went to McDonald's tomorrow, it's going to taste the same way it did 20 years ago. And so that level of consistency in my food and in my life and in my schedule and how I show up, like they all go together for me. when I have to go downstairs in the middle of a day and I'm like, I forgot to leave out my chicken or my thing. And I'm like, I have to think about now what to put together. Dude, it's just not good for me. It's just like, oh, it's energy. And what do I want to eat? It just screws my day up. When this coach taught me, like, run your business, run your family, don't fucking stress about the food. That's my job, right? Read the paper, put it on a plate, read the number, make sure it matches, and figure out a way to enjoy it, And all right, and I did, but then the results, when you start seeing the results and you start seeing, like Brandon said, the clarity of when I took sugar out for 10 weeks, and then I put it back in, I literally was like, I now know what the rats feel like when they get cocaine. Like, I found myself wanting to go back, no matter all this discipline I had. I'm telling you, man, I could not believe how much power that sugar had. It kept telling me, go back for another scoop of ice cream, go back for another scoop. And I was like, holy shit, man, that stuff is powerful. And another thing is, when I would have it this happens to all of us, if you have sugar late at night, it really affects how you show up the next day. It really impacts your thoughts, your confidence, your clarity. So I saw,
like
I was able to see that, by taking it out for so long and then reintroducing it for cheap meals. I would see, wow, this Sunday I'm really feeling because I had too much of the sugar. So now what we do is we make healthier versions of things, and it's literally the treat is the treat, and I have a lot of fun with it. So it's a better way of doing it for us.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. And my wife has a thyroid disease, so we had to really ensure that we don't have certain things in the home because it really inflames, it makes it really bad for her. And she loves to bake, so she's found all these ways to bake, muffins and all that kind of stuff, and even cookies that are honestly almost good for you. They're barely a treat. It's
like 3 ingredient.
She'll make cookies for me that have protein powder in them and stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, baby. And so you can make it fun and still be that kind of placebo effect of I'm getting my reward that you were used to, but it's replaced with a much better option. Yeah, where you still can't only eat that thing, right? You still need to have a basic level of discipline. Yeah, but you can get that kind of hit that when you need it, and not feel guilty about it, knowing that hey, this is actually pretty good for me.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's so fun. A good example for me, when I have that hankering to have something sweet, I have that 000 Greek Oikos, the vanilla. Yep. I have Premier Protein pancakes. And so I'll put a little dollop of that on them. And then I have this Simply 5 Hershey's chocolate. I put a couple drops of that on there, and I eat it like a chocolate taco. It's great for you, but it tastes like freaking ice cream or one of the sweet treats I'm used to. So you can have fun with it. And that's the thing I always like to point out is you can still love your diet, but you just got to experiment. You got to have fun with it. You got to figure out what's good, what you can be consistent with. Right.
That's right. It's 100%. Once you get there, Brandon, and then you have fun with dude, I made this, there's this bake thing and cookies and 3 ingredients, and it's fun. But when you're so on the other side, it's that's just nasty, dude. Eat the real stuff, right. Yeah, I can appreciate that. So you have to get the acquired taste buds. Like my son, I've been trying to teach him things. I'm like, buddy, before I cook you something healthy, you can't take a bite of a chocolate bar. It's just not even going to be comparable. Right. Context, son.
Stuff was made in a lab to make you want to keep eating it. So.
That's right. Yeah, the right balance of everything: sugar, salt, fat, everything. So getting simple for guys, man. I think we do really well with simplicity. We do really good with order. We do really good with just kind of directions and blueprints. And so that's what my life operated well under. In the years I didn't operate well, I didn't have those things. Right. So that's what I think the underbelly of Dad Bods was this is the priority. Outside of starting the business and running the house, you need to be able to show up for you and be ready for these guys. And fitness is a component of that. Eating healthy is a component of that. What you put in your body is going to control a lot of the ways that you think and show up, and your energy and your motivation and how you feel. So they're tied, right? And when you tie those two together and you get the momentum there, it gives you the fuel to go. I launched Dad Bod Sculptors because of this business. 3 years ago, I didn't take a picture of myself. I didn't want to I never had selfies. I went to go look at all these before pictures. I had no fucking selfies of myself. Like there was like, I was so uncomfortable in my skin. I can't stress that enough. Right.
Huh.
Because people see now and they're like, I'm like, dude, it was not like this. Like there was this whole process, but because I showed up, I all of a sudden then was comfortable enough to take my shirt off and put it on the internet and tell people to look at me. You know, like that's a complete different
That's right.
end of the spectrum, you know, that came from showing up and then being called to do something bigger and better to serve other men on a bigger purpose other than building businesses with product management things, right? So it was like, and then when you tie in, like, damn, this mission wasn't just about me wanting to feel good. It's like, now my wife is there. My kids are super proud of me. All the neighborhood kids come over and they're always flexing in the house and they're always in our gym. And then the neighborhood dads are like, what the hell's going on over there with the bodybuilding? My son's asking for chicken and rice. And
You're welcome.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate dad flex.
Yeah. So like, you know, I think for guys, we all create this in our own world. We're all centers of influence in our own world.
Mm-hmm.
So go be that. Like I always like, it's like step into it, you know, find something and step into it and own it and go deep into it and serve people at a level that they can relate to from your experience. And so all I try to do is take this busy dad who was trying to fucking figure it out, was always somewhat health conscious, was always moving, but then all of a sudden woke up in this body and that he just wasn't comfortable with and didn't like how he was showing up and decided like, there's a solution and I got to find it.
Yeah. I love that. So I want to segue kind of our line of questioning here a little bit, but I want to tie it back to what you said earlier, where, you know, you launched this and it was about your passion and purpose to help other men. And that leads really good to kind of a discussion about legacy, where there's this quote I love where it says, legacy isn't what we leave for people, it's what we leave in people. And so like this in a way is going to be part of your legacy, right? Helping other men get to a better level, be better leaders for their families, feel more self-confident, right? That's a very amazing, noble thing, right? And a lot of people try and poo-poo that, but look at the transformation that's happening in people's lives, right? It's not just physical, it's the ripple effects are huge, right?
Yeah.
What does legacy mean to you? You know, and you know, what is the kind of end goal legacy that Dane is trying to build?
I want to help thousands and thousands of men. Like I have a very big vision for Dad Bod Sculptors, right? Like an 8-9 figure company. Like I like, and that is only because I want to impact so many households. I want to simplify this for so many men. I want men to be walking around as the person that they want it to be. So for me, it always starts with like my household. That's where it started. Like I wanted my kids to be proud of me. I wanted my wife to be proud of me. And then when I received that, I then wanted other men to experience that. Right. So like, that's my mission, is like other men to then say, man, that dude helped me. Right. Like that guy helped me, because I didn't have that person. Like that was, I get emotional about it because I wish I had it. I had it and then I lost it as a grandfather, and then I lost it. So I was always seeking it through books and mentors and YouTube. And I just wish somebody would have said, dude, I got you, man. Like, come here. Right. We'll get this done. And so for me, I want to be that person where somebody says like, dude took me under his wing, right? Selflessly gave me all his information, over delivered, way more value than I could ever put a price tag on. And he did it with passion and purpose, and he was honorable. I think that those are like my core things, you know, is doing everything with passion, with purpose, and doing it honorably. So if I can have a legacy where people use those words to describe me, then I'm happy.
Yeah. I love that, man.
Well, you talk about your kids and you talk about legacy, and Dane, Albert Schweitzer once said that example is not the main thing in influencing others. It is the only thing. And so you talk about strong dads and strong kids. Like, so what's the main things you're wanting to teach your kids outside of fitness?
It's always respect. I tell them, like my kids, I'm always teaching them to embrace the journey. And so what that is for me is failing and learning and failing forward and trying and getting back up and dealing with the frustrations, whether that's fitness, whether that's coding, whether that's building, whether that's designing, right? Like fail forward, get comfortable with that process of going deeper and getting better. And so my son loves soccer and he loves baseball and he loves jiu-jitsu. and he'll stop when it gets hard. One of them, he'll always stop when the coachable moment is there. And my biggest challenge is showing him, hey, come in here. I'm dealing with this right now. I'm not winning. Like, I'm failing, and I'm having to explain to him, I'm angry. I'm emotional about it. I'm frustrated, but I'm not leaving the desk, right? Like, I'm working through it. And so for me, I get emotional about that. I don't know why. It's getting them to have that, like, no stop. Like, we're going to keep trying, right? And so I just did it with fitness, and fitness gave me the physical side so I could say, yeah, see, I fucking did it, but you don't always get that always. Like in headhunting, I never got that. I can have all the success in the world, but no CEO wants to give you credit and no candidate wants to give you credit. It's like, yeah, thanks for this. So it's like you always felt like you were just a cog in the wheel and the purpose wasn't as deep as here. But here it's like, it's deep because I'm living it, right, every day. I'm teaching it and coaching it from that experience. And then I also have people watching.
Yeah.
Dane, that's beautiful, man. And I can clearly tell how well you just pour into your children. So shifting it a little bit to people pouring into you, what was one of the best pieces of advice that you got in your life that you could carry forward for others?
Shit, man. And probably one of the most impactful things for me was when I was a stockbroker, and I went to UBS Financial Services. There was this really successful multi-million-dollar producer, and he became a manager, and he was super charismatic, and he had everything that everybody would ever wanted in a business guy, right? And he hired everybody, and I remember him telling me, he said, when I do hiring, here's my trick. He said, I hire from the third floor, and I always make sure I can see the door that the candidates come in. And he said, and what I do is about 10 minutes before they come, I make my assistant go down there and throw a piece of garbage in front of the door. So I can watch if this candidate comes in and picks that garbage up and throws it in the trash can before he comes into the interview. Because that's how you judge character. And that was like so profound for me in my own standard. Like I always held that, like I would see a piece of paper, I'm like, fuck, somebody's watching, And it was just like, I always had like somebody. And so from now it's God. But back then it wasn't always like the presence of God or doing right. But that, like in everything, whether I'm doing work I don't want to do or whatever, it's like somebody's watching, there's somebody watching. And even in the gym, it's like you always aspire to be somebody in there. Like you're looking up to somebody and you don't know who's looking up to you that day. So it's like, don't go in there and be a dick and don't be rude and treat people with respect. And regardless of their fitness, like everybody's on their own journey. And like that resonated with me a lot. It always stayed with me. I tell that example all the time. Like, be who you are, treat others the way you want to be treated, but also be who you are when people aren't looking and have that character.
I love that example because, there's a historical figure, Henry Clay. He was a statesman and he kind of did the same thing. Like any potential employees, he would dine with them and he would watch to see if they salted their food before trying the food itself. Yeah. And he kind of used that as a measure of their, their impulsiveness or their judgment. Right.
Yeah.
And that's such a good example and such a great piece of advice. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was really great. It was, it's impacting me. I don't know why I thought of that, but yeah, that was probably like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
If not longer, maybe 20 years ago. But it's always stayed.
So you put the shopping carts back then?
What?
You when you go shopping, you put the cart back, right?
Yeah, literally. I'll always, yeah, exactly right.
I do too.
And I'll always think, I wish I never heard that.
Yeah.
The lazy side is like, son of a bitch, I got to go back. And you go back and you do the right thing. But dude, I mean, imagine somebody said something 20 years ago and one dude heard it and he does better every time he's conscious of it.
Yeah.
That's how. That's when somebody makes a movement for you. Yeah. So I think legacy for me is like I started Dad Bod when somebody says you said this to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did tell you that. But it impacted them way more than it impacted me. I think that then we're all serving each other.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, man. And to those listening, you can do that. You don't have to be like a coach. You don't have to be like in a role specifically, where you're mentoring people like officially. You can be that guy for people along the way. And so find those opportunities, capitalize on those opportunities to impart wisdom or say that like loving, caring thing that person needs, and that's something I try to really stress with men is, that's part of how we're built, is to be a mentor, to be a figure for others, and to kind of pay it forward. And your example right there is exactly that. That guy told you that thing 20 years ago. You're still talking about it here on this show right now. Clearly it made an impact on you. And, maybe he has no idea that it impacted you that much, but that's not the point, right? It's not for his own personal gain. It's the fact that he bettered your life. And so we have that opportunity every day to do it for someone.
Yeah, that's the benefit, and I think as men, like, we need to pick each other up, and that's the whole thing. And everybody has a skill set, everybody has an experience, and everybody has a problem, right? And it's when we have the opportunity to cross paths, it's like, hey, is this person here for a reason? What am I supposed to share with them? In the giving mindset, and somehow when you're in the giving mindset, things come to you.
Yeah. It's because you can be trusted with more, you're capable of actually helping others better. And so they present themselves to you, it's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, we ask a question to every single dad on this show, and it's, what is kind of your favorite core memory? Like when someone says, what's the best thing about being a dad? Like your favorite memory that just pops into mind.
Dude, it was the best. It was the moment I had with my son at the end of last summer. I had done this transformation, but again, like, you're your worst critic, so you feel good about it, but you're always like trying to progress and everything.
Yeah.
And I never found myself like, in vanity and things like that. It was just kind of like when I set up the Instagram account, I was like, okay, I got a job now, right? Like this is my job. Right. But it was one day my son, he had watched all these YouTube videos with me for years. He saw me watching these guys like every night. And he learned about Mr. Olympia because it was coming up. And so we went to a pool show. Mr. Olympia was in October or something like that. And we were at this pool like September. And one of the kids was like, are you Mr. Olympia? Like one of these teenagers, these cool little 13-year-old teenagers, And then my two sons, who had just learned like what Chris Bumstead was and Nick Walker and all that, they just had this association like, did they just call you? And they told everybody, like, these kids thought my dad was Mr. Olympia. Look, Dad, show them what Mr. Olympia looks like. Dad, show them your abs. And it was this moment where I realized who I had become. And they had realized, like, oh, my dad, oh, shit, what's up? I realized, like, shit, okay, like, I stepped into this. Like, finally, it's here. Like, now I play from this place versus, like, playing defense. Like, now I'm here.
Right.
But it was also like how my son was like impacted by these teenagers looking up to their dad.
Right. Yeah. Like it was like outside validation that you are their superhero.
Yeah. Like, dude, I was so far from that. Like, yeah, it was like so far from that person. So it was like when you try to transform or you try to create this other better version and you're digging and digging and digging, you never really look at how strong the foundation is or like what the building looks like. So it was like my moment of being like, holy shit, we built it.
Yeah. You were able to kind of just rest in your, like, you're not done, right? You never like stop.
Yeah.
But there are moments where we need to pause and just kind of enjoy the moment, right?
Yeah.
And enjoy the season. And sometimes, that restfulness and that peacefulness is a good thing. And like that's one of those moments, man. It's so good.
Yeah.
And it's a great example for guys. Like when you work towards something, like include your family in it, have it be a family triumph, not just like your own little pursuit on the side. It's such a great way for us to bond better with our kids.
It was the moment where I realized like habits are caught, they're not taught, because that moment, everything changed for him. He started getting into working out. He wanted to be with me more. He literally, the whole way he interacted with me changed. And there was a period where we weren't that close because kids when they're like 3 or 4, they're more mommy-ish, and I'm kind of like, when is this kid going to kind of like come around? And then I went to this place where I was frustrated, so I didn't know how to receive them, right? So like I knew like I got to change. So that was the moment of like, like he he's put me in a place of like, he's ready to follow. Right. And so, yeah, that was definitely my like, yeah, like, okay, now I play from here.
Yeah.
You know?
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So good.
It was a great moment.
Dane, where's the best place for people to find you? I assume it's Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram's the best place.
Dad
Bod _Sculptors. Also, same thing for YouTube. We started a YouTube channel a couple months ago. That's doing really well, and that's growing nicely. And that gives you a lot of content that I produce around on Instagram, which is educational content for men around training and nutrition and mindset and motivation. That's perfect. Kind of the pillars of my content. And then I dive deeper into that in longer form on both YouTube and LinkedIn.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Dane, closing thoughts, words of encouragement for all the dads out there.
Yeah, man. So the number one thing is you got to prioritize yourself. You can't look at the thing as an expense. A lot of guys keep writing this off like, oh, the timing is right, the money is right. It's never going to be right? Even if you don't have the money, get yourself 25-pound dumbbells, find an influencer that you can pick a 15-minute program from, or if you have more time, you have more resources, hire a coach and get the path. But either way, get yourself into a physical activity every single day and sweat. Don't worry about rest days. You're not going to be burning anything out at this stage. Like, get yourself moving. 2, and then surround yourself by other people that can help you, right? And I think that's a big piece. For your show, I don't know when this will air, but I want to do something for the men. So I want to give a scholarship to one of your viewers. So we'll give a 90-day full scholarship to a guy that's in need of a transformation for Father's Day. We're holding that. So I'll give you guys a keyword. If they find me on Instagram and they message me podcast, we'll get them an application and they can submit. And we're going to give one person a complete transformation with me and my entire team, somebody that's in need, a transformation. So if you're watching this, go to my Instagram, find me, message me, podcast. I'll give you guys credit, and then we'll pick a winner on our channel and transform them.
Awesome. There you go, guys. Well, hurry up and send that message. That's a great opportunity, incredible opportunity. So, and Dane, thank you for your generosity on that. That is awesome.
Of course, man. Yeah, I was looking forward to it. I prayed about it, and I was like, yeah, this is definitely what I'd love to do.
That's super cool, man. So, guys, you heard it. Do it now. Don't miss out. Give yourself that shot. That's going to be a good one for sure. Dane, man, what a way to end. Love that. And I just love your energy, the example you're setting, your passion for helping other men succeed and rise above. And, I think we need to do more of that in our modern society, right? There's so many things telling men they're second-class citizens. It's good to connect with another man who's made it his mission to raise men up as opposed to tear them down. So appreciate all your wisdom and sharing your experience and story here. And man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one more time. Message him.
Guys. I can't thank you enough, man. I'm absolutely in love with your mission. You guys produce solid content. You're putting good people on there. You're giving everybody a voice. And I think that purpose is resonating. Like, you're creating waves through that you don't even feel and see right now, but it found me and I immediately connected with it. So I'm grateful and blessed that I had a chance to share my story and meet you guys. So
thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. All right, man.
All right, brothers.
Message Dane. And with that, let's get climbing the mountain of fatherhood. We will see you in the next episode.
Cheers. Later, guys.
Thanks for watching this episode of the podcast. If you're on YouTube, drop a subscription to us. And if you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It helps greatly. If you are also ready to level up as a man, check out Elite Sentinel Coaching, our program designed specifically for men, where we forge men into leaders. We turn cowards into kings, weaklings into warriors. Become the hero in your story. Join us today.